From Hollywood, California, welcome to Reza Riffs with your host, Keith Reza.
Hey Rob,
Hey, what's up?
how much? How are you, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it. It's nice that other comics help young comics out.
Well, we only have each other.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. When you started comedy, did other, because I think comedy wasn't, there's only like 100 comics, where now there's so many comics. You know what I mean? So like when you
Yeah.
started, who were the guys that looked out for you?
Um, all the old guys were really, I guess because they knew, they knew the animal, they knew what we were dealing with. There's that kinship and brotherhood, it's like a fraternity. You found your tribe, and they for the most part they would be very welcoming. I mean, Freddie Roman, was one of those guys. Soupy Sales is one of those guys. Um, Pat Cooper was one of those guys, but really all, you know, the kind of people who had a substantial name in the business and lend a hand, and give you a little insight or whatever. It was a good time to come up. I mean, I don't think I would start now
Yeah,
because like
it's
you say,
tough now. Yeah.
there are so many comics out there now. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah, and it's so weird because like it kind of, I don't know if you like run into people, but if you run into one person, then like you go to a different club, you rub into someone else, they kind of have the same material type thing. You know what I mean?
it's funny you should say that. I've made an observation once. I was in the car and was listening to I guess, the Raw Dog Comedy Channel
Yeah.
on Sirius XM, and I kind of, how you half listen when you're driving, and I realized that in the 40 minutes I'd been in the car, there were five different comics,
Oh my God.
and I couldn't tell one from the other because the
Yeah.
material was the material was the same, the delivery was the same, the tone of voice was the same, the take was the same. It was all, I mean, maybe the material wasn't the same, but the take and the attitude and the delivery and the performance all were like cookie cutter. It was kind of amazing.
Yeah. Well, so like you were lucky where you started right before the big comedy boom, like the first one, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's where, it was more word of mouth, and like people would call people and be like, "Oh, you should go see this guy. He's really, really funny." But I started right before social media. So now that social media is a big thing, it's all about how many followers you have. You know what I mean?
That's the thing. That's what's crazy. I mean, I started in the late 70s, and that was, when Robin Williams got huge, Steve Martin got huge, and they were kind of inspirations. I got into stand-up because I wanted to be an actor.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be the quickest way of doing it because I could make a living while I was,
While
trying
you
to
were
become
trying
an
to
actor.
act, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that kind of training is always good too. I mean, um, the having that kind of background, spontaneity and stuff, it can only help an actor. And I was really I'm trying to think how to put it. I was really kind of blessed because we, starting out on Long Island, we ran the show. I mean, there was nothing out there. I mean, we had Richard M. Dixon's White House Inn in Massapequa, and then it was at least a year or so until the East Side Comedy Club opened. But, you know, there were a group of us, there's 7 of us that were like we call ourselves the Magnificent Seven. And it was Bob Nelson and me and Eddie Murphy and Jackie Martling and Dave Hawthorne and Bob Woods and Richie Minervini. And we, kind of called the shots, and we would, you know, get these one-nighter gigs. I'll never forget there was a one-nighter at the Smithtown Landing Country Club. This woman got this idea. She was going to be a comedy show producer.
Yeah.
And she got the rec room at the country club, and she had some chairs set up, and she had a microphone, but she had no microphone stand. And so we went into the game room because I at that time I used props, so I needed at least a chair to put my suitcase and a stand so I could turn around and take the shit out of the bag that I needed for my act.
Yeah.
And got a pool cue and an umbrella stand, and we duct taped the microphone to the pool cue.
Oh, that's pretty smart.
And we stuck it in the umbrella stand, and that was our microphone stand. But it was that kind of stuff where we kind of made it up as we went along. And it was really great training too as a comic, because it gave us the freedom. I mean, even more so than the usual showcase rooms, that's the place where you're allowed to be bad and try stuff out and network and connect with people and actually get some stage time.
Yeah.
We could be really bad because we were the only thing. We were great, and we thought we were great. We thought we would never, we thought we were going to live forever and we were all going to be huge stars. And
well, they say that comics, they have like I think that's everyone's goal, is to live forever, but they say comics have like this lifespan that even when they die, they still will live forever, like with their spirits.
I think if you can make someone laugh, it kind of leaves behind a mark.
Yeah.
It's the people will associate the memory of you. I might not remember your name, but they'll remember that guy who did that bit about Tom Carvel, or it was that guy who did the Mr. Rogers teaching the kids how to smoke dope, and it was all those things that. It's the memory of that laugh, of that good time that sticks with people. And I think that's how you kind of live on in that situation, really.
Yeah. I mean, we just lost Richard Lewis yesterday, and I met Richard a couple times, and, I was friendly with him, but I guess maybe it just hasn't hit me because I still feel the spirit, you know what I mean? I was best friends with Norm Macdonald and Bob Saget. So
oh, Jesus God.
Their spirits are all around me. So that's why I don't feel maybe comics really die for exactly what you were saying, because if you can make people laugh, you impact them.
We refuse to give up the stage. I can see the spirit hanging around because it's like, they gave me the light, but I have another 10 minutes. I got another 10 minutes I want to try out, and they'll do it from the other side if they have to. It's just the way that we are as comedians. It's like that old show business joke where the comic in Vegas has 2 shows, and one show he blows the roof off the joint, and the second show is good, but not as good as the first. And this beautiful, buxom showgirl shows up this dressing room backstage. She says, I saw your act tonight, and I am so turned on by you. I will do anything you want. I'm yours. And the comic says, which should you see, the first or the second? And that's exactly what we're like, it's all about us. So death isn't enough to hold us back.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
But isn't that so funny? Because now, I don't know if you're still jumping into stand up, because I haven't, seen your name on the clubs for a while. Are you going back into it, or?
I've done a couple of hand-picked gigs. My days of being a road monkey are long gone.
Yeah.
And unless I promote it myself, I was doing a lot of theater shows. I would do the promotion myself and do theaters. But so much of my following came out of Imus when I was working with Imus in the morning.
Yeah.
And when he went off the air, that was an entire group that I couldn't promote to anymore. And so it became increasingly more difficult to do that, you know. And now I see these comedy clubs, and unless you have 10,000 followers on TikTok, they don't want to hear from you. You know, it's
It's
bizarre.
sad, yeah,
And it's
because
it's
because
it's a
those TikTok guys don't really have a good joke structure. They just do their 30-second videos.
they're
You know what I mean?
not, yeah, they're not artists. They're media personalities, you know, and it's a very different thing. I'm not saying they're bad. I mean, some of the stuff is clever and some of the stuff is funny, but I consider stand-up an art form, and it's really not. I mean, it's like a photographer who uses film and develops stuff on his own, and the one who uses a digital camera and takes it to Rite Aid to get developed. You know, it's just it's
Uh,
there's a difference between the two. And there's no digitally you can make up for all the faults that you would have normally in just an analog photo. And that's the way it is with comedy. There's no heart to it. And I think that's part of the problem, at least for me. It doesn't seem to be making that much of a difference, but the audiences have changed. I mean, aside from the fact that they're getting younger, they are products of this, you know, of looking at the screens, you know, of texting and posting and all that kind of stuff. So the attention spans are shorter, and the the sense of humor is very, very different. You know, the things that they respond to. Um, and COVID didn't help. You know, it just made people more insular. And where comedy, to me, the best way of doing comedy is in a room with people. It's a shared experience. There's an aura about it.
yeah,
There's an energy, there's a vibe, and when you're watching somebody on TikTok, it's not there. Even though there are, you know, tens of thousands of other people watching that TikTok, they're not watching it along with you in the same room, and so that experience is entirely different, you know. And so I miss that interaction, that live interaction, because it just doesn't seem to be there anymore. You know, we got so insulated and on our own during COVID when nobody was going out for anything. You know, a lot of comics are trying to do Zoom shows and
that
shows.
did not work at all.
Well, because you can't count on the timing. You know, it's just it's so weird. But you know, you get a comic who goes to an open mic night on a Monday, and by Thursday he's signing papers for his or her first special
Uh,
on Netflix. Or there's a billion streaming services, and every one of them, you know, at any given time has got somebody in front of an audience doing a theater show. You know, it's bizarre. There are people who are huge, huge, and I don't recognize the names or the faces. It's so weird to me. I mean, there are a lot
yeah.
of comedians who I knew, never worked with, but I knew of them. I knew them, you know, and I just don't anymore. It's so strange. The names don't ring bells. And, you know, it's a shame because some of them are really, really good. You know, there's my new favorite is Eddie Pepitone.
Oh, I
I
love Eddie.
I love Eddie Pepitone. He and David Tell are two guys who can make me laugh out loud. You know, I have that comedian's disease where I very rarely laugh out loud. I'm in judgment. So, oh man, that's a great line. Oh,
Yeah,
it's a good bit. I wouldn't open with it, but that's a good bit. Instead of actually laughing. But with Eddie Pepitone and David Tell, I mean, turn me into jelly. I mean, some of the stuff is and it holds up to repeated viewings and listenings. You know, I love those two guys. I think you know, they have a very specific point of view, very clever. They work crowds like, you know, artists. He's like a maestro, Eddie Pepitone. And David Tell, the crowd work is just impeccable, you know, and that's instinct. That's
yeah.
instinct and years on the road, you know, doing it. So
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 I wanted to ask you, since you brought those guys up, because those guys I think are great, but in a way I feel like, I'm not saying like it is 100%, you know, you, but it's kind of like a style around you too. Do you think maybe that's why you're so turned on with that type of the humor? You know what I mean?
perhaps, you know, we all have individual tastes. I mean, um, there are some comics who I really liked who were very different than me. Who was the guy? with the glasses. I'm at the age now where I just can't remember shit. I'm this close to hiding my own Easter eggs. Um, who was the comic who had the glasses? He died, unfortunately, and he very deadpan. Um,
Did he die recently or?
oh, he died a couple of years ago of an overdose, actually. Long brown straight hair,
Oh,
like
Mitch Hedberg.
Mitch Hedberg.
Yes.
Mitch Hedberg, I couldn't get enough of him when I first
Oh,
saw him.
he was great.
And
Yeah.
he's so different from me, but I just didn't, I really loved the mind and the thought process and the connections he made. And people would say, oh, it's Stephen Wright. But it wasn't Stephen Wright. Stephen Wright was great. He was one of the few of that type. And I think he was kind of groundbreaking at a time when guys were really loud and boisterous or whatever. And he had this Salvador Dali like take on things. But it got to the point where I could see where it was going after
Yeah.
a while. With Mitch, I never knew where it was going. And it was such a riff. It just seemed like riffs, freestyling, um, just let it flow, the spontaneity of it all, the um, being in the moment, connecting with the crowd, almost individually. Um, really was really special. But he was so different than me, but I really loved him. I thought he was amazing.
Yeah, he was great. Mitch also was one of those like comics, because my first year of comedy is when he died, so I met him once or twice. But he was one of those type of comics where like he'd tell a joke and you think like, God damn, how did he write that? You know what I mean? Like it was just so, you know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
genius. Like
Yeah,
you're like, holy
absolutely.
Lord.
Yeah, it's that's talent, that's inherent ability. His mind worked that way, and he was able to capitalize on it. He knew who he was. He knew what worked and what didn't work. You know, I mean, when I was first starting out, there were comics at the comic strip, and Jerry Seinfeld was always looked up to because Jerry was a workaholic.
Yeah.
When we did the Fort Lauderdale comic strip, we would go to the mall and the movies or the beach during the day, and he'd be back at the comedy condo writing 3 hours a day, every single day, with that discipline. On stage, he would dress up, he would wear a shirt and joke, a coat and tie. He really took it seriously like a professional. And at one point, he was wearing a jacket and a shirt with no tie, but buttoned up to the top. And every comic, started
Started to
wearing the
do that.
same
Yeah.
thing. It's just so weird. Everyone emulated him because of what he did. So
Now,
yeah.
like now comics, when they do stand up, there's a 80% chance they're in their pajamas. You know what I mean? So like it's
Which,
so funny how the dress
that-
codes changed.
that's a thing. I mean, Freddie Roman used to say to me, he said, it's so weird for me because I wore a tuxedo when I went to work.
Wow.
He never worked without wearing it was always a tuxedo. And that was, part Catskills, but it was also that era. It was all about it being special, about being, pay attention. This is an event. This is a special event. And I'm wearing formal wear just to underline how special it is. Um,
It's,
really, really different.
it's funny you say the tuxedo thing because the first year I was with Norm, his the first year I was with him was his last year that he was wearing like suits and tuxedos and nice stuff on stage. And I
Mhm.
remember like the third or fourth show I worked with him, I asked him why does he do that? He's like, because you never know if you're gonna get married after the show, you know?
That's a great Norm impression. Um, his he was somebody who could reduce me to jelly when he did. Trying to remember, he did an interview with somebody. I don't remember who it was now. It's just gonna kill me. I can't remember his name. Um, where he did the bit about I'm proud of my gay son.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like
Oh,
on Conan, right?
Conan, or no, it could have been Conan because of the language. It was, oh God, it's gonna kill me now.
Yeah,
Used to do the news on SNL.
yeah, yeah. If I had like a good producer, I'd point to him and he'd be like, "I'm gonna Google it."
Looking it up on Google, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
But Hey, I wanted to ask you when you got on Law and Order,
Mhm.
because you're a comic and that show's very not comedy. So like
Mhm.
that's the goal of you wanting to do an acting. Did that like was that a credit that helped you sell tickets? Because there's a lot Law and Order is like a huge show that a lot of people watch.
It was something to add to the resume, and for me, it was just great because I was doing what I'd set out to do. I got to be, an actor on TV,
Yeah.
and I wanted to play a cop. And fortunately, a couple of years ago, I did a 5 episode story arc in Elementary, and I got to play a police captain, which was just the greatest. Whenever you have a credit like that, it just makes you seem that much more important. That makes people maybe want to take a look. I'll get recognized every once in a while as, oh, you defended the Fonz. Henry Winkler was one of my clients on SVU. Um, and the characters were all, there was a little bit of humor in each one of them too. So it wasn't like I was, straight the entire way. It was,
Yeah.
even though the comedy came out of it being a character rather than like jokes, it was the behavior that the character that got the laughs. It was still, kind of funny. Like
You,
I did a lawyer on The Good Wife, and that was like his thing was like he was just this money hungry dick, and all the comedy came out of that, that characterization.
uh, you must know every excuse in the book just by doing these shows on how to get out of jury duty now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
It's funny. The last time I did jury duty, I waited a whole day. Actually got to voir dire, and the I think it was a slip and fall case, and the lawyer was interviewing the jury, and he says, "You're not a lawyer, are you?" I said, "No." I said, "But you play one on TV." Next, and it was because he really. So I think it's a great way of getting out of jury duty at that point. You know. Oh,
Oh my God, that's awesome
yeah,
though.
it was great. It was great.
No, as much as I think murder is terrible and stuff, but like whenever I get a jury duty, I kind of always hope it's a murder trial. You
Oh,
know what I
sure,
mean?
sure. Have you served on a jury?
No, I've never gotten like chosen. I've always gotten dismissed, but
Um,
it's always for like stupid cases like, oh, this guy stole $10 from me. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I don't,
yeah.
but so here's how I came to about you is because I saw you maybe it was a VHS thing or HBO thing, but Rosie O'Donnell hosted the show and she
Oh, yeah.
brought you up and you
VH1. Yeah.
yeah, and I thought it was so great. So that's how I became a fan of yours, and I
Oh,
thought like
no.
that
That's a while
comedy
ago.
is just awesome. Yeah.
That's a while ago. That's got to be 30 years ago. Jesus.
Well, I watched it because I interviewed Rosie O'Donnell about 6 months ago. So I was just
Oh,
watching all her shows she hosted and I
gotcha.
saw it. I was like, holy Lord. So like
Yeah,
that's the type of comedy I like is smart, sophisticated. You know what I mean?
Rosie was one of the ones that started out at Dixon's as well. She was like the next class to graduate. I was the first class that graduated, and she was like the sophomore class, and then there was people just on down the line. I knew back then that she had it. She just was fearless on stage.
Uh,
Yeah.
did, so like, did you like, because like if you knew back then about Rosie O'Donnell, so like, is that something where like you could just tell when you work with somebody that, oh, they're gonna go places, or can you like, do you have that gift? Because there's
I
some
knew
people who have that gift.
I knew that she had at least potential. She grew into herself, but you could see the raw beginnings of somebody who was going to be very successful. The only time I actually knew someone was just going to be, huge, the moment he set foot on the stage was Eddie. When Eddie Murphy first did Dixon's, he took the stage like he was Elvis. He had that confidence. And his material was awful. It was nothing. It was like Richard Pryor, it was this tribute to Richard Pryor, and it was like two or three other things that were original. But he blew the audience away just with that persona, that stage presence. And when we were in the triplets together, he and Bob Nelson and myself were the identical triplets. We were this kind of improv sketch group that also did our stand-up acts, but condensed versions. So we kind of were a package. Um, package act that we're trying to get booked through. King Broder was the agent, and we were this package act, and we kind of did it because we were such great friends.
Yeah.
We go to the movies and shit together and whatnot, and we just thought this is a way we can always work together. We'll get booked as this group. We'll each do little small versions of our nightclub acts, and we'll do sketches and some improv. And we did an improv once on a night we were gonna go out, just go out with no movies worth seeing. We went to a bowling alley, and we couldn't get into the bowling alley, and we were adamant, we're not going to Dixon's. We're not working tonight. We're taking the night off. We're not going to Dixon's. And of course, we ended up at Dixon's.
Yeah.
And it was in the middle of the winter, and Eddie had this fur jacket with a hood, like a fur hood, faux fur, brown, completely brown. And we went on stage, and he was an Eskimo, and Bob was a hunter, and I was a walrus. And I did the whole improv with a Liverpool accent. I'm the walrus. But I don't remember what it was, but it was one of the most exhilarating times I've ever done a sketch or an improv on stage, because the chemistry the three of us had, it was like boom, 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 boom. We just fed each other. We kept the ball in the air. I think the improv went on for like 25 minutes, and we just destroyed,
Yeah.
And that whole chemistry thing is huge. We did a benefit for Bob Nelson. Bob had unfortunately contracted colon cancer, and so we did a benefit to help him with his medical bills. And some of the old guys from the Magnificent Seven came back, and we were in the back. It was Governor's Comedy Club on Long Island, and in the back they have a podcast studio, and they do live podcasting. And whenever there's a show, they ask you to go from the green room and hang out a little bit while the opening act is on or whatever, and chat. So it was this live thing as each act was on, and Bobby and I were sitting next to each other. We had these headsets that they gave us for the podcast, the big earphones with the big microphone in the front, and we're just sitting together. And good afternoon, passengers. This is your captain speaking. Just launch into that. And this is your pilot speaking. On the left, you can see the Statue of Liberty, and on the right, you can see, and Bob goes, the Grand Canyon. And I said, so basically, it means we have no idea where the hell we are right now. Co-pilot and I smoked a big fatty before we took off, and we're not exactly sure where we are, and we're dangerously low on fuel. So it looks like we're probably going to get to our final destination a lot sooner than we expected, but it's not going to be the final destination you had planned on. And we're just riffing back and forth, and we hadn't done that together in over 35 years. Yeah. And we picked right up where we left off. It was just great.
That's the chemistry though that you guys built. It's like, because like you said, comedy is a brotherhood. So like when you have that click, you could like not see someone for 15, 20 years and then just go back into it. You know what I mean?
It's the purity of it too. The being in the moment, the spontaneity of coming up with something and immediately throwing it out there. And there's no better time on stage than when that clicks, and when that's hot. It's addictive. I mean, it's Jonathan Winters. Jonathan Winters was one of the hugest influences on me when I first started. I wanted to do his type of character. And he had a show where they had an attic where they just filled it full of crap that you would find in an attic. And part of the show was him just walking around the attic, picking up things and doing a character with this thing, whatever it was, and a pool cue would be a cane, or it would be a rifle, or it would be, Jesus. And it was just amazing, this stuff that he could do. So when I did my Broadway show, when I did More to Love, I set it in a garage because it was supposed to be suburbia. And it was the same type of thing where we had crap all over the place that I could use to get in and out of the bits of my act.
Oh, man.
But that, being able to riff in the moment like that, it's just, that's when it's the purest. I love it when I know a comic is freewheeling, when it's just like, okay, a lot of times crowd work, if there's a heckler, or watching really, really good people work with hecklers, it's just great. It's like a lesson.
How was like the heckler Gene, when you started? Because like nowadays, it seems like people like to go to shows because clubs, they don't they say they frown upon heckling, but they really don't. You know what I mean? Because you see all these videos
Yeah.
of people getting heckled. You know what you know what I'm saying?
There's always going to be hecklers no matter what, because, it's a Friday night, it's the early show or the late show, doesn't make a difference. They've rushed to get there. If it's the late show, they've already put away 4 or 5 drinks by that point, and the guy's on a date, and she's laughing at you, and he gets pissed off because she's laughing at another guy, and so he figures that he's going to show he can be funny too, and so that's when he'll pipe up, and I love those moments because it's just because then you get the audience on your side, and then it just becomes this battle of wits.
Right.
They never win. They
Oh,
never,
never.
never
No.
win.
You could,
Um,
even if you're the worst comic in the world,
yeah,
there's a good chance you're going to beat the heckler.
they never win. And when we do the East Side Comedy Club, we would do that to each other all the time. We would heckle each other I would be a character, a drunk guy sitting in the back, and Joey Cole would be on stage. And I'd be, hey, that was a funny joke. Ha. And then he would address me because he knew it was me. And we would go back and forth as the heck, like the plant,
Yeah,
Um, but I think heckling now, it's almost like it's part of the program almost. It
yeah,
seems, unless it's on Netflix and it's in a theater, anytime it's a comedy club situation, there's going to be somebody talking out, because that's bred out of people at home watching TV, talking during the movie, which is why when you
exactly. Yeah,
theater, people never shut up. They have like general conversations while the movie is on. I mean, it's just so stupid.
yeah.
It's the same kind of thing.
My parents were the exact same way with the movies. They always talk like during the movies, and it ruined every John Cusack movie for me because it's like, yeah. I wanted to ask you a couple questions, and I want to respect your time. Are we good on time?
Yeah, I got like another 20 or so minutes. I mean, I don't know
Uh,
how long.
yeah, we'll do 20 if that's cool with you.
Yeah,
I just want to respect your time.
sure.
Uh,
I got
so
I have a dress rehearsal for this play that I have to get to. That's the only.
okay, cool. So I wanted to ask you about like impressions and characters because you've done a lot. Like, what is the key on making those really shine? You know what I mean? Because you do it for laughs, which I think is the key, but there's also some people who don't do it for laughs. They just do it. You know what I mean?
For me, most impressionists didn't have great material. They just had this ability to parrot other people.
Yeah.
Rich Little, a perfect example. I mean, the most awful, awful, awful material on the planet, the hackiest shit ever. But he was brilliant in voices. Frank Gorshin was brilliant in voices. Fred Travellina was brilliant in voices. Very few impressionists ever had great material, great acts. It was more like the aha instead of the ha ha. Ah, it sounds just like Christopher Walken, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's two kinds. There's like impersonations and impressions. An impersonation is like when you have somebody dead on, like Jay Moore's Christopher Walken, for example, when you just
Oh, it's so good.
nail it. I mean, that's the standards bearer. That's the bar. That's set. When it comes, because everybody thinks they can do Walken, and
Speaking of walking, did you see that Super Bowl commercial of him?
yes,
Oh my God. Oh, well, that was like the best commercial during the whole Super Bowl.
it really was that, and the Jesus washed feet commercial. Those are my two favorites during the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Um,
Jay should have been in that commercial. He would have been great in that.
why are you washing my feet? Um, and then there's impressionists where it's an impression, where it's not spot on. It's like Will Ferrell's George Bush. Not spot on, but nuances, things you recognize, behavior ticks, an approximation of the voice. It's like when I was an IMIS and I did Rush Limbaugh. It wasn't a spot on Rush Limbaugh, but it was as close to it as it could get, and you'd get the rhythm of the patter and try to get in the same oral tone And of course, what was said was part of it. And then when I did Dr. Phil, that voice was closer to the real Dr. Phil because my voice kind of lent itself more to that. When I did The Godfather, it was a passable Brando that I could get away with, you know.
Yeah.
It's always about what works comedically. It doesn't necessarily have to be a spot-on impression for people to know who you're doing. As long as the take is funny and the material is funny, you're gold, you know.
Yeah. Or you have that energy where
Yeah,
like you're like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I don't know. I forgot who told me this, but someone told me that when you do an impression, regardless if you know how to do them or not, just act like you do. So I don't know.
Makes sense. That makes sense. You know, committing is everything. You know,
Yeah.
if you commit, people go, wow. Wow, it really, it just they respect that for some reason. They go, oh, it must be good. I don't think it sounds like it, but everyone else does. So I'm gonna trust them. I'm gonna trust them.
Or they leave the club, they're like, oh wow, that was the
Yeah.
worst walking I've ever heard.
I think there's a bit in some like I used to do a thing every once in a while where I would be a really bad comic
Oh
on
yeah.
stage. You know, I would do it whenever there was comics in the room and there was a small crowd, like a Catch a Rising Star at 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever. And people would be coming back from their one-nighters in Jersey. And we used to watch Gilbert go crazy at that time. They put Gilbert on to drive the three drunks who were left out of the club so that they could close up. But I would do this really bad stand-up and and just the most awful stuff, but so earnest, you know, so earnest. And it was just so much fun because you could do the inside kind of thing, you
Yeah.
know. Um, um, and comics playing for other comics is there's nothing better than that. Because
Oh, it's
and
the
when
best.
when
Best.
we watched a compadre, you know, eat the midget when they you know are just dying. There's nobody who loves it more than us. Um, like that gig I was telling you about at the Smith Atlantic Country Club. The people in the room were clueless because they were all dressed up and they were an older crowd. And here we are in jeans and t-shirts, and we're the hip happening guys. And you know, we're doing bits like Mr. Rogers teaching the kids how to smoke pot and um, I can't remember half the stuff that we did, but it was all of the era. You know, it was like a
Yeah.
rock and roll comedy. And it was like to silence. And Dave Hawthorne was up, and Dave had a very eclectic act. I mean, Dave smoked a lot of dope, and that was like the platform from which all these twisted ideas would come from. And it would lay us out, but depending on the audience, whether or not they got it. And this audience was not buying it. And the more he died, the more we thought it was funny. Bob Woods was a great impressionist. Late Bob Woods, late great Bob Woods,
Yeah.
and Hawthorne were best buddies. And when Woods laughed, when Woodsy laughed, it was just infectious because he would start to cry, he'd lose control. I mean, it was really great. And Woodsy was almost on the floor, and the only one in the room laughing. And
Yeah.
Hawthorne kept going, and then finally Hawthorne's got the pool cue with the microphone in the umbrella stand. He just starts doing this. And he goes, the butter will be ready in about a half an hour. It's just, it was it,
Man,
you know?
Gilbert was, oh, he was the best, man. I could just so imagine him, being that guy to get people out. And then I could also imagine people not leaving because they like, you know what I mean? Like,
Well,
it,
so much of his stuff was on the planet Mars. I mean, just the references he would make, and he would be so specific and arcane, and you know, we all just adored it because it was just so unbelievably funny. I
uh,
once saw him do 45 minutes without opening his eyes. He had the eyes closed like this. What? Hey, I would not. He never opened his eyes. He picked up a chair, just a chair, and did the Beatles writing and used the chair as a guitar. It was the Beatles writing a song. One night we were there, and he was like, I just got back from Africa. It's all black there now. And it was, I mean, we lost it. He
yeah,
was just brilliant, just brilliant.
yeah. So, last Gilbert question, because I only met him a couple times, and
Mhm.
I wrote a couple episodes of the Norm Show, and he was the guest, and so like he always did talk like that, but I heard a rumor that that wasn't his real voice. Do you know if that's true or not?
Um,
Or
he put it on for the stage. Um, it, he was a very soft spoken guy off stage. Very, very
really?
soft. Oh
Wow.
yeah. Very, very soft spoken. And I don't know if you ever saw, there's a documentary about him where you get to see a little bit of him behind the scenes. Um, but I mean, you'd work on the road with him and he would take the little shampoos and the little soaps out of the hotel rooms and he would just collect them. And at his apartment, he had these enormous plastic tubs under the bed that were filled with hotel sample size shampoos and body wash. And I mean, it was something about he just couldn't leave a hotel without taking it. It's like part of the thing.
Like a souvenir type thing. A lot of people do
Almost,
that.
I don't know if
Yeah.
it was a souvenir or whether he just thought it's free. I don't know.
Yeah, but I have heard a lot of people do that at hotels where they take the something
Mhm,
like that. Yeah.
mhm.
I wanted to ask you about radio because you've been doing radio, and did you know, because I feel radio is still pretty powerful. A lot of people, you know, can debate about that because there's not a lot of big radio shows, but I feel it's still in a form the father of podcasting.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, talk radio, I don't think will ever go away
Yeah.
uh, because people just like to have something on in the background so they don't feel so alone. And morning radio is very strong because people associate that with their daily lives. That's what they do. They put the radio on in the car when they drive to work. And so morning shows get very devoted followings because you are part of people's daily life. And the stronger the personality in the morning, whether it's an Imus or a Howard or Opie and Anthony or whoever it is in the morning, they're going to be part of everyone's, you know, day.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I think that kind of radio will probably always be there, especially AM because AM has such a strong signal. Uh, I was once in Bermuda and WFAN was booming in pretty easy. So I guess it skips across the ocean at night. But I don't, I mean, music radio is pretty much done, I think.
Oh
I know,
yeah, definitely.
it's, I mean, WABC AM is still around as a talk radio station, but that was the number one station in the country. When the Beatles first came to America, they were the station that covered it all. They had Murray the K and they had all these, Cousin Brucey, all these great jocks, and people like Chuck, Scott Muni, and they were just icons. And now podcasting has kind of taken over for that because there's no format. It kind of was born out of the whole Howard Stern, just stream of consciousness, keep talking, and then have 90 minutes worth of commercials at the end, not to break the flow.
Right. Yeah.
Hymas was very old school radio. He would always hit the posts. He would always have a hard break. He was of that era. But I think what Howard did was kind of open the door to podcasting because there were no time limits. There were certainly no speech in terms of free speech. You could use whatever language you wanted. You could spout whatever you felt like, philosophically. Um,
Tom Green was also another good pioneer, I feel.
yes, yes, absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
just by his shows and stuff, and like I think what made him special is he was like very culty, like the
Mhm.
only few people knew, where
Mhm.
Howard Stern everyone knew. You know what I
Right.
mean?
All right. Yeah. Well, I mean, radio breeds cult followings.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
Art Bell, the guy who was on late night and talks about UFOs. I mean, there's a lot of people, off the grid in their bunkers listening to Art Bell. So,
Yeah. And then this other question I had, which I don't know much about wrestling, but I know you were on wrestling, and I wanted to know like how was that like when as a comic, where because wrestling and comedy, I feel, how comedy has the audience are like, this is comedy, we're gonna go laugh. I feel wrestling has the audience where it's like pretty big at just as probably equally as big as comedy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. It's I got into it and like through the back door, basically. I was doing a benefit for Connecticut Special Olympics, and Vince McMahon was in attendance. I was doing the auction and I was emceeing the event. It was a fundraiser. And he was, and the WWF, as it was at the time, this was 1993, WWF, there was nobody, no organization who did as much charity work as they did. I mean, the wrestlers every single day would visit 2, 3 hospitals, do a Make-A-Wish, whatever it was. I mean, just amazing charity work. So Vince was there. He was at a table up front, and he was wearing a 3-piece peach-colored velour suit.
Whoa.
Because he was sitting right up front, everyone could see him.
Yeah.
I did 20 minutes on him and the suit. It was like, wow, Vince, styling. I mean, did you look in the mirror when you left and went, yeah, I'm ready to go? That's a great color. Does it come in any heterosexual colors, Vince? Does it, I just hammered him mercilessly. And so the next week, I'm coming back from the radio, and I get a call on my car phone at the time. Was Imus's assistant. She said, Vince McMahon just called looking for you. He gave me a number. He wants you to call him back. I was like, oh boy, because I knew, I kind of heard that he was not the guy who really had a great sense of humor when it came to himself.
Right.
I called him and he said, Bartlett, how'd you like to do live television? And he had this idea for this Monday Night Raw where he would do a live event from the Manhattan Center every Monday. Well, every Monday except one a month because it was booked for something else. And then we would go up to this hockey arena in Poughkeepsie to do the show every third week. And his idea was to have somebody who was doing morning radio and was used to current events and could think spontaneously on his feet, and it would kind of feed into the whole live thing. And it was Vince and Macho Man Randy Savage and myself with the 3 original hosts of WWF Monday Night Raw. And it seemed like a good idea at the time, but I think pretty early on in the premiere episode, Vince knew that he had made a horrible, horrible mistake by having me be part of this, because I think the first match was between Yokozuna and somebody. I don't remember who it was. It was some, can of corn or whatever they call it, whatever it is in the lingo. And Yokozuna was, I think, a Samoan guy who must have weighed 500 pounds, but he was dressed like a sumo wrestler.
Right.
And he came in and he did the squat and he threw the salt in the ring and did the whole thing. He had his manager, Mr. Fuji, who was a wrestler in the 60s himself. And he came into the ring and I said, wow, Vince, that guy's got an ass like an amphitheater. And there's this pause. And then you hear Vince go, well, I don't know about that, but I'll tell you this, we're on Monday Night Raw. We're uncut, uncensored. And I mean, it was like literally the first words, and you could just, I think it may actually be on YouTube, that opening show.
I'm going to find it. Oh my God.
See, it was just, and you can just hear this little pause. And in my head, when I'm watching it, I hear Vince in my head go, what did I do?
Yeah.
What have I gotten myself into? I was on it for 13 weeks, and it's already larger than life. So to have a comic be on top of it, it just really didn't add anything,
Yeah.
away from it. And I didn't really know a lot about wrestling. And because I was one of, the commentators, people expected me to know something about wrestling, but Vince thought that me not knowing anything about wrestling was going to be good. Again, seemed like a good idea at the time. So the best show out of the 13 I did before I called up Kevin Dunn, the producer. I said, look, man, I said, this is really not working. I think I'm really ruining the show. So I'm going to take my leave. And he was really disappointed. He wanted me to stay on. We were going to do these other things. I wrote a spec script for a sitcom featuring wrestlers called The Turnbuckles. And
nice.
Had a bed. Their bed was an actual, had a ring, had ropes around it like a ring. And and it was a family of wrestlers,
Yeah.
and a couple other projects. But I said, you know what, I'm not really, I'm just going to go. And but one of the last episodes I did, Vince was not going to be there. He was getting an award for his charitable work, and Macho Man was going to go with him to introduce him at this sports ceremony. So I was left as one of the only original guys with Bobby the Brain Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. And to his credit, Vince pretty much let me do what I wanted. I mean, he did some things that he wanted to me, which I didn't know about or had any say. That's another story. But you know, I dressed up as Elvis for one of the shows, and he had Doink the Clown pie me at the very beginning of the show. So the entire time I'm Elvis with whipped cream on my face. No, you know, for the rest of the shot. Anyway, so I asked the makeup lady, I said, can you make me look like Vince? And she said, yeah, I think so. And she styled my hair, and she gave me big lips, and she got shoulder pads for the tuxedo. And I couldn't really do Vince saying stuff. I mean, in short bursts, I could. But
Right.
if you listen or you watch some of the clips from the old days, he's very high on the hill. He's very, very
Talks
into it.
very fast. Yeah.
Very fast, very high, and very excited. Oh no, it's just a pile driver. And so what I did was every time there was a match, I would say, "Oh no, it's coming in! Foul! Show is getting a pin drop! Oh, Monday Night Raw." The only thing I would say was Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
And Gorilla Monsoon was so bemused. He had no idea what was going on. He didn't get it. He was getting more and more irritated as the show progressed. Heenan was loving it because no one had ever dared make fun of Vince before, you know.
Right.
So that was one of my favorites. And then the next week, when I came in for the pre-show meeting,
He got fired, right?
well, he said, "You're fired." Of course, he didn't. He didn't fire me, but
Yeah.
following, I showed up.
Oh man.
I was met at the elevator by a cameraman, and I walked into the showroom, and there was nobody there.
Wow.
They were doing a remote up in Poughkeepsie, and they didn't tell me. And then they went to me live during the show. Rob Bartlett is still in Manhattan Center. We forgot to tell him. We forgot to. So how's it over there, Rob? I was all by myself. That was his way of getting me back. I was like, "Touche, you win. You win this one, McMahon."
Right.
Really great. Really, really great.
But no, there is something about wrestlers where, like, I get a lot of requests on like who to interview for this show or whatever, because not to brag, but it's popular. And
I know, that's what I hear. I mean, I'm surprised I never watched it before.
no, but so I get a lot of requests to interview wrestlers, and I
Mhm.
interviewed one wrestler, and I remember it was one of the worst interviews I had because
Really?
I thought he wanted to murder me, like literally during the whole thing. So I could just imagine the intimacy you must have had, you know,
Oh,
because you're doing it as jokes where you're not sure if they're buying it or not. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
They're in character. I mean,
Oh,
and
yeah.
for some, they're in character to the nth degree. Undertaker would be in the room where, you know, they had the grilled chicken and steamed vegetables and pasta, and big bowl full of IcoPro bars, which was the WWF's version of Metrex. And Undertaker would be in a corner of the room with the hat and in full costume, squatting with his back against the wall. All right, squatting, but like flat-footed squatting against the
Right.
wall, straight ahead, and didn't move. I almost think he never even blinked. Didn't say anything until it was time for his match, and then he would just get up and he would walk out and do his match. But it was like he was in character. Like the minute he came to the facility, he was like,
Yeah.
so, you know, but I got to say, some of the nicest, most wonderful people I ever worked with, I met, were part of the WWF. I mean, Bobby the Brain was an unbelievable human being, very kind, very supportive.
Yeah.
Randy Savage, again, could not be kinder or more supportive.
I've heard he was actually really cool.
He was
Like
cool.
I heard like he did like I'm like a big Spider-Man fan, and he was in Spider-Man, and I was listening to an interview with Bruce Campbell, and
Mhm.
they were like he was because Randy was like the wrestler in that, and he's like Randy just was just the coolest guy. He was like, yeah, it's Spider-Man. I don't know. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's
You want some excitement? Slim Jim,
yeah.
brother. Oh yeah. He uh he
He's
was
like
just
a comic slash wrestler. I
yeah,
got that
yeah.
vibe. Yeah.
Well, Bobby the Brain and Gorilla were almost like Abbott and Costello. They had great chemistry together. They could have done an act at a comedy club, hands down, no problem.
Oh,
They had
really?
the
Oh,
oh yeah, oh yeah. Virgil, we just lost Virgil. He just passed the other day. Another sweet, gentle, kind man. It just fun, it was, and like I said, the charity work that they did was just unbelievable.
yeah. Well, Rob, my last question for you
Sure.
is if you could go into a time machine and talk to a younger version of yourself and tell yourself what you know now, what advice would you tell yourself?
Um, Try to enjoy it while it's happening. I think part of, and I don't know if this is all performers, I know it's certainly a lot of comedians. We're so plugged into this mindset of the next gig, the next level. I got to do Carson before he retires. You set these goals and you're working towards them, and you either get them or you don't. If you don't get them, it can be devastating. And then you just completely ignore the fact that on the day before New Year's Eve, you sold out the Palace Theater in New Haven, 3,500 seats for 2 shows.
Yeah.
At the height of my Imus popularity, that's what I was doing. But I was so bummed that, Carson was going off the air and I wasn't getting a chance to do Johnny. And a couple of my peers had. So I think the inability to enjoy the successes as they're happening and really be grateful for what does happen as it happens. I would tell myself to just take some time to just live it and enjoy it, because we're always looking for the next show.
Yeah.
We're always looking for, why is that guy not laughing? Standing ovation for everybody else. Why is that guy not laughing? We focus on that for some reason. We remember the times we died more than we remember the times that we killed. It's just the nature of the beast, I guess. But I think I would tell myself that and just say, let it happen. Be open to the universe. Wherever you end up, it's where you were meant to be. So you can change what you can. A lot of it you just can't. So just go with it, man, and pull down your pants and slide on the ice.
I'm so glad you said that and you didn't say, okay, Rob, if Keith Reza ever asks you to do his podcast, say no.
No, you're great, man. This was a great interview. You
Oh,
got,
thanks,
got a
Rob.
great style. You asked the best questions.
Oh, awesome. Well, where can the folks at home follow and support you? Like, do you have a social media or an
Yeah,
Insta?
I'm at the Robio, ROBIO on Insta. Also, I think, I'm sorry, at Robio007 on Insta, but also Robio Radio Comedy Hour on Insta. And then I don't remember what I am on
On
what
the
is it?
others? The
Yeah.
OnlyFans?
No, yeah, right. What's the on the my face space, whatever that is. My uh,
Facebook.
threads.
Threads. Oh, Threads. Yeah, the one that's connected to
Yeah,
Insta. Right.
yeah, but I'm on that, and then I have a website. I teach acting online. I also coach for auditions, college. People have college auditions, or uh, I coached somebody for an audition, and she got a part. She got a guest starring part on the TV movie about the Aaron Hernandez trial. She plays the judge,
Oh my
and,
God.
and so
That's
um,
awesome.
that's the RB for Rob Bartlett, studio.com if you're interested in that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm doing a show. I'm doing Grumpy Old Men the musical. We open Saturday night, and I'm playing the Walter Matthau part. I have some great songs. Certainly some of the best songs I've had since I, played Amos in Chicago or Mr. Mushnick in Little Shop of Horrors. It's really, really funny. It's really touching. It's a great night out, and Kind of in my semi-retirement, I'm doing the odd gig here and there, and this time it's going to be theater. So
Awesome. Well, Rob, thank you so much for being my best friend for 45 minutes. I really appreciate it.
I got to check you out. Where can I find you?
Just Keith Reza. I'll send you my special on email and you can just watch it if you want.
Oh, I would love to.
All
Thank
right.
you. I
All right.
appreciate that.
Well,
All right,
Rob,
man.
have a great day, buddy. I love you very much and keep making people laugh.
Remember, no matter where you go, there you are.
Ah. All right. Bye, Rob.
Bye.
All right, guys. That was the interview. Subscribe, review, tell a friend, and we'll see you guys next week on Reza Riffs.